For the majority of US history, the dollar has been backed up by gold and silver. But that all changed in 1971 when Richard Nixon temporarily suspended the convertibility of the dollar into gold. And as we are all aware now, that temporary suspension has lasted for quite some time. And during this era of purely fiat dollars backed up only by the full faith and credit of the Federal Reserve and the US government, we have seen the value of the dollar depreciate precipitously. And we are seeing that change reflected now in skyrocketing inflation and rising consumer prices. And in response, one US Congressman, Alex Mooney, has proposed a Gold Standard Restoration Act. And it's a very interesting piece of legislation. We're going to take a look at it in today's video and some of the choice language that this bill has regarding the Federal Reserve and fiat currencies. And also, we're going to take a look at some numbers from the Federal Reserve and the US Treasury and see if we can determine just what kind of price gold would need to have in order to back up the dollar with gold now in 2022.
Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. Thanks for tuning into today's video. If you get some value from it and you enjoy it, please do give it a big thumbs up down below. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to the channel? Okay, so here's the Twitter of Representative Alex Mooney, and he's tweeting, "I am proud to introduce HR 9157, the Gold Standard Restoration Act." And he says, "The gold standard would protect against Washington's irresponsible spending habits and the creation of money out of thin air. Prices would be shaped by economics rather than the instincts of bureaucrats." And I've got to say, this guy Alex Mooney hasn't been on my radar up until this point, but seems like he knows what he's talking about if you ask me. And over here at Yahoo, we've got a headline, U.S. Congressman introduces gold standard bill as inflation spirals out of control. And this Gold Restoration Act that Alex Mooney has proposed, it is calling for nothing short of the repegging of the dollar to gold, with the idea of addressing the problems of runaway inflation, increasing debt, and the instability of our monetary system, which I tend to agree that implementing a gold standard would have those effects, although I think it would be quite disruptive initially. But, that's what we need. We need a disruptive force in our economy to separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak, and to shake out all the zombie companies and to get rid of all the bad debt. It's going to be painful before we can get back to a healthy economy because the economy is so sick. And something like reinstituting a gold standard would certainly kick off that process. Now, some of the text is pretty interesting, and the process by which they intend to implement this gold standard were this bill to pass. And I don't think there's much chance of that occurring, but let's say it did happen. What they want to do is audit the Fed and force the Fed and the government to disclose all gold holdings and then implement a peg of the dollar to gold at a fixed price. And this is some of the text from the bill. To enable the market and market participants to arrive at the fixed Federal Reserve note dollar gold parity in an orderly fashion, the Treasury Secretary and the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve shall each make publicly available all holdings of gold with a report of any purchases, sales, leases, and any other financial transactions involving gold since the temporary suspension in August 15, 1971 of gold redeemability obligations under the Breton Woods Agreement of 1944. And I know that there's quite a bit of speculation out there about how much gold the Treasury and the Federal Reserve actually have, and they have not been entirely transparent about that. But there is some reporting from the Treasury, which we can take a look at here. And this is what they say they have right now. And if you add up everything they have listed here, including Federal Reserve Bank held gold, they give you a total number of 261,498,926.241 fine troy ounces of gold held by the US government. If we want to determine what the price would be of gold if we were to peg the dollar to it, it's really a fairly simple equation. You just have to take the number of dollars and you divide it by the amount of gold, right? Because if you want to back the dollar up with gold, you need to make sure that you can actually make good on that peg. Because if you peg it at some artificially low price, people will just come and take all your gold and they'll just give you dollars and they'll be buying gold at a devalued price. And then you'll run out of gold and you won't have anything to back your currency up with. So it's important that you arrive at the right dollar gold peg. And we can take a look at the M2 money supply here as reported by the St. Louis Fed. And if we look at the most recent data from August of 2022, we can see that the M2 money supply stands at $21.711 trillion. So if we plug that number into our calculator here, and then we go back to the Treasury page, and we divide the M2 money supply by the Treasury's stated gold holdings, you can see that that gives us a gold peg price of just above $83,000 per troy ounce. And if that number seems shocking to you, and I mean, I admit that's certainly a very high number, that just goes to show you how much money has been created since 1971. I mean, really, there has been an absolute dollar printing bonanza since the dollar was taken off of the gold standard. And again, if you want to have a gold peg work, you need to do it at a price that you can actually redeem your dollars for the metal. And so setting an artificially low price doesn't do you any good. And one thing I hear people say a lot is that you could never return to a gold standard because there's just not enough of it. And that's actually a fallacy. I mean, you could have only a few ounces of gold if you could divide it small enough and still have a gold standard, because it's just a matter of setting the price high enough. You can back up any amount of dollars with gold as long as the price of gold is high enough. And so that's an important thing to consider here. Now, all of this is likely to remain speculation for the time being, because I think it's very unlikely that this bill is going to get anywhere in Congress, as the majority of politicians enjoy the powers that a purely fiat currency give you as a politician, where you can spend endlessly and you can simply use the printing press to finance that. But this shows you two things. One is that awareness of the necessity of something like a gold standard is rising. And two, we're not going to get a good solution like this. So ultimately, what we are likely to get instead is a collapse of the dollar, because all of that spending and all of that inflation is not going to be constrained by the impediments that a gold standard would place on the Federal Reserve and on Congress. Of course, that doesn't mean that we aren't going to see the price of gold rise. In fact, I think that we probably will see the price of gold and also silver and other precious metals rise precipitously once this dollar fiat experiment reaches its inevitable final outcome, which is the complete and utter debasement of the currency. So I still think it's probably a good time to be stacking gold. And if you are interested in getting some gold, SD Bullion has some really great sales right now on 1 ounce gold bars. You can get those for $64.99 over spot. If you're in the mood for a sovereign coin, they've got these kangaroos. And then this is a really interesting bar, these PAMP 50-gram gold bars. Now that is quite a large piece of metal, bigger than a troy ounce, but this is also very low premium. Right now, these are only $37.99 over spot per troy ounce. And so compared to, say, a gold eagle, which is going for almost $200 over spot right now, something like this is a real steal, I think. And it's nice to know that at least there are still some low premium options out there in this very tight physical market. So leave me a comment down below to let me know what you think about this proposed gold standard. Do you think it has any possibility of going anywhere? I mean, I'm not convinced, but still, it's a piece of legislation that would get my vote. And thank you all very much for watching. I really do appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope you all are staying safe, happy stacking, and I'll catch you next time. Smart Silver Stacker out.